Hello everyone, welcome to the interview of Beyond Border. This is Betty from China. Now say hi to you from Shanghai, China. At Beyond Border, I will invite guests who have been living and working in different countries and cultures to share with us the valuable lessons that they have learned through their cross-culture journey. Today, let's meet Francisco Halls. Francisco is a cross-disciplinary artist from Mexico. He creates artworks through very different media, such as sculpture, installation, and music. Recently, he has been chosen as an artist during the program of artist residency in the Swatch Art Peace Hotel in Shanghai, sponsored by Swatch Group. Francisco's journey to China started as a student, came to China learning Chinese language. Later on, he decided to settle down in Shanghai due to his great interest and curiosity towards Chinese culture and the people here. And so far, it has already been 11 years. He told me during this time he has traveled to many places in China, and when he's not traveling, he loves to hang out with his Chinese local friends to jazz bars and local diners, and also like to visit galleries and museums in the city. He said the very diverse landscape and culture in Shanghai just reminds him of his hometown. So here is my conversation with Francisco. So, Francisco, what's your first impression about Shanghai?
Yeah, I feel very welcome. I feel like they are very open. I like the humor. I like the way they socialize and sit drinking while eating, which was a ritual I enjoyed many times with them. Because when I came here, most of my friends were only Chinese, and even that the language was a barrier, I felt always very welcome by them.
Did you have any culture shock?
About cultural shocks, well, I guess the general proxemics of people in China are just quite different from Mexico, And when I came here, I was trying to hug everybody, like, hello, how are you? And I could give a hug and I wait. They were not really used to being hugged, or the proxemics within public spaces when you queue or when you're in the subway. They were different. So that was something I had to adapt.
Where have you traveled to so far?
Well, after so many years, I have traveled to few spots. It can be Hangzhou, Ningbo, Suzhou, Guilin, the Yellow Mountain, and some of the most faraway places like Yunnan, which is a mixture of taste, and it has such a huge influence from the Southeast Asia, which it made it quite special. All the Chinese minorities that are there embrace a fully new visual universe and way of dressing, and the cuisine and the music is so distinct and amazing. That was one of the trips I enjoyed the most, as well as the Xinjiang, which is one of the far east spots in China. It has such a rich natural layout. So I went to Kashgar, to the mountains of Turpan, and I was just in the border of Pakistan as well, which was amazing as well to see the inner Mongolian yurts and so on spread around. And after that, actually I started moving inland, and I was lucky enough to go to Gansu. So I visited the Monkau Cave, which was a greatly magical experience. I could really transport myself through time and feel how that spot was a key area for the Silk Route for people to pass by, for merchants to pass by. It was a point of cultural mixture and enhancement. It was a beautiful, this Buddha, like thousands of Buddhas that you can see and go around the cave. So I enjoyed a lot those places.
What do you like to do in Shanghai?
Well, it has changed a few times across this decade. So at some point, I would always go to jazz bars, which Shanghai has a great tradition of jazz, and then have a little bit of a taste discovery through cocktails, meet friends, and chill out. So mostly I will go to art galleries, museums, and other cultural events, and meet friends. Friends leads my moment. I value the moments that come from people.
Could you introduce us several Mexican artists that you think their artworks can introduce one or two things about Mexico?
Well, one very important art movement that happened in Mexico in the early stage in which a national identity is being built after revolution and after like starting to settle and ask yourself who you are and express it through art, was the muralist movement. So people like Orozco or Siqueiros or Diego Rivera, which was the husband of Frida Kahlo, or Tamayo, were recreating the cultural momentum that Mexico was going through. So I would recommend to have a look to the muralist movement. Well, through the muralist movement, you can really approach the folklore of the city, to the variety of people, of way of dressing, of food, the growing industries and the different classes were all represented. Betsabe Romero works a lot with tires and puts some traditional, like indigenous communities patterns on the tires. So it blends the urban environment with the most indigenous expressions, and it's a game. So decoding an artwork it has a complexity by itself. It doesn't give anything very, very straightforward. So what the viewer can learn is also to the capacity of reading the piece. And something more into the contemporary times, I would recommend Betsabe Romero or Teresa Margolles, or even Francis Alice, which was in the Biennale. Even if she is not Mexican, she has lived there all his life. And he can really be very analytic through how the behavioral mechanism is amazing. He does some videos about the most, you would say, the most insignificant things, but they acquire huge value through their work.
Do you find similarities as well as differences in terms of living in Shanghai compared with living in your hometown?
Well, I guess one of the similarities is that both are huge cities, very populated and in constant change. So one of my experience in Shanghai that it keeps repeating and I keep loving it is discovering new spots by just letting yourself get lost in this amazing city and go into the alleyways. You can always find like cool views even, or cool spots to stop and see how everything is working, which is something I can do also in Mexico. That's one of the similar points, I think. And also, I believe how the food changed all along. I mean, because China is so big that the variety of the landscape and the richness of it keeps offering, it keeps giving. And you can endlessly keep exploring. And I feel it reminds me a lot when I like exploring my own culture and my own country. Also, the way that public and private space plays in China, it's amazing how both of them are blending constantly. And I lived in a few places that had public spaces that I would pass across by, and there was amazing moments of interaction when you go back to your home and you have to go actually through the kitchen, public kitchen, and then you meet your neighbors and you see what are you cooking, and like maybe you should invite me later. I would bring some beer and I eat what you're cooking. So those encounters were very special, and they don't really exist in Mexico. But at some point, it's also an architectural style, and it became character by itself, and how it triggers social interactions is fantastic. At some point, the most modern co-living spaces would work like that, right? And maybe in the future, we will really try to redefine how do we interact with the people we live in, at least in the same building.
How would you describe the art scene here in Shanghai?
I feel art is greatly diverse, to be honest, and I can see it in so many different spots. I remember when I just came to Shanghai, the art district by excellence would be Mogan Shanlu, and just in M50, you could see already a very rich diversity. I mean, it's an area that has like 40 galleries, and you could see how the traditions are very well kept and even pushed forward through reinterpretation of ink, of Chinese ink, or how does the red has always been playing a very relevant color in art. But then you walk a little bit and you go to a gallery that is already using like multimedia installations, and the subjects that they are referring to change completely. So I think it was diverse when I came here, but still has been diversifying more and more and reaching more and more. Like just the West Bund has developed in an impressive way, like how many galleries and how many museums are being built has been impressive. Just in the last decade, the art fairs have been reproducing. Like now we have the Art 21, the West Bund Art Fair, the Photo Fairs, and all of them have I would say, different purpose and different way of curating it. So that's another layer to the diversity again.
Are there any of your artworks are inspired by your experience of living in China?
Yes. Well, in general, the aesthetics of the temples have infiltrated to my work, and you can see it mostly in the installations in the vertical garden. Also, I have found a lot of empathy with the Taoist view of nature, like these ideas of harmony with the universe, the qi and the energy flow, the yin yang. They are quite in tune with the ideas of my work, and it keeps inspiring it. So that because my work addresses dynamic systems and developmental possibilities of matters, connectivity of life, and so on, which is also present in the Taoist idea, and something that's across all my works. And apart from that, I did include a couple of visuals of Chinese culture in a couple of photographies. For instance, I have one called Buddha's Dream, in which I took a sculpture of a Buddha and then I started building a sculpture over it. And afterwards, I took the picture of it and I digitalized it, and I kept adding elements. Sometimes I would paint it, take the photo, and put it again in the digital composition. So at the end, the idea of the work, it was that Buddha is again connecting with the natural elements, the 5 natural elements.
What do you think the biggest barrier for people to learn culture of each other?
I think what we really should have is curiosity for life, and not be so self-centered, and do not have a nationalistic ego that can blind us. If you achieve that and you have curiosity, then you might as well amplify the clues that you find around. So if you find something that is speaking about certain culture, and then you go to the internet and dig deeper, you might find a universe behind it that will link with another different worlds and so on. So I think the main barrier is definitely the mainstream narratives and the constraints of having access to information, tastes, sounds, and experiences that are beyond a direct experience.
Do you think art can be helpful in facilitating people's cross-cultural understanding?
Yeah, definitely. Art is a window for different cultural expressions, and well, culture itself and art circulate through many different objects, through design, fashion, or more formal fine art. But definitely art can help. Just choosing the right art is also a challenge, because as we were saying before, like, art usually breaks the conventions and breaks the codes of communication itself, reinterprets and challenge the way of we see reality. So maybe, as we were saying, some cinema can be a more straightforward way to understand culture without many conceptual filters, as can happen in more conceptual art. But definitely, as more as you see, as more as you can amplify and understand the regional codes of behavioring or communicating.
So, what's your new art project coming up?
Yeah, well, my art refers to nature, so it should be a universal value, right? And I found it is the way a lot of ancient civilizations were understanding and referring to art, to nature, was very similar. So that's where I could find maybe a global perspective, something that can go beyond nationalities and beyond religion and beyond regional ways of thinking things. It's nature, because nature really brings together our origin as animals and as species, as humans, or a part of an ecosystem. And when you explore the different ways in which indigenous communities or ancient civilizations were referring and approaching to nature, you find that they are very similar in different spots of the world. So my art project is taking this perspective and blend them with contemporary science. What before was coming through just intuition and looking at nature as an intelligent system now has been proved by reason, by theories, and by experiments. So I think it's a moment in which ancient beliefs can converge with the most contemporary scientific thinking and retake nature as an ecology, as an emergent global ideology. And my works are trying to do that, to reframe the way we understand nature and to bring it closer. The coming work are installations. Basically, it's a vertical garden in which I insert many different iconography that stands for scientific theories, as it can be complex systems, the fractal theory, or the Fibonacci structure, and so on, with some experiments that actually put some videos in the piece. So then the video shows the experiment itself of how nature is reacting intelligently to a stimulus, how it can read the space, how it can develop memory, how it can take decisions itself at daily basis as a animal with consciousness, with certain degree and certain kind of consciousness.
Okay.
So that's the recent piece that I'm doing, and I'm doing it meant to be very, very easy to transport, very easy to place in your home. I would love my works to revive the ritual with nature. The works, the installations looks a little bit like an altar, so they are very, very, very indigenous, very grounded to the earth at the same time that they can be contemporary. So I would love that people in their own home, while taking care of the plants that are in the installation and looking them grow, they will join a more conscious relation with the plants that's surrounding them, surpassing the misconceptions of nature as the plants as an object or as a thing that generates oxygen for us to breathe, but more like a living being in which you can establish a deep emotional empathy and coexistence in your own home. It comes easy, it comes natural. You don't need science, you don't need big statements, but sometimes just trying should be enough.
And this is my conversation with Francisco. As he mentioned, the biggest barrier for people to learn about each other's culture is about whether people have the genuine curiosity. The truth is, the answers or knowledge about certain culture are always there. But if one aren't really interested about other cultures, then he or she won't take initiative to figure out. And that's exactly the reason how culture bias, or put another way, certain narrative views toward other cultures are established. Let's hope Francisco's genuine curiosity and interest about Chinese culture will continue to lead him to explore something fascinating that can transform and inspire his art creation in the future. And this is the end of today's show. My name is Betty. I'll see you next time. Bye.